Good morning to you. It's me, Robert, again. Today is Saturday, the 18th of April, and I just want to put over a few more of my views and hope that they resound with some people out there and perhaps persuade people either to comment, to like me, or even to subscribe to what I have to say. Anybody watching me for the first time, I have no particular axe to grind. I just like to observe and to comment on what I see about me. I feel that I have a great deal to say, particularly about the current circumstance that we find ourselves in. The first word that I want to put out there today are the words authoritarian state. I've heard this bandied about in the media through people in general. I've heard a gentleman from Texas talking about totalitarianism and whatever. And this morning I heard a presenter on a national radio program refer to our current authoritarian state. I presume what he was referring to was the fact that we're under rules restricting our movement and our freedom of association. And that's quite true. We are under such a regime at the moment. But to use the word authoritarian state is particularly strange and a particularly bad word to use in such circumstances. We are happily a democratic society with a freely elected government, with a free press, full access to all of the internet should we wish to use it, and the ability to say within the boundaries of decency, within the boundaries of the law, more or less what we like about anything. An authoritarian state, for example, is China, a one-party system that limits freedom of speech, that limits access to the internet, that allegedly imprisons thousands or tens of thousands of people who disagree with what they do and say. Russia, to a certain extent, is one as well. Whilst not theoretically a one-party state, Mr. Putin has managed to, over the last 10, 15 years, however long he has been in control of Russia, to manipulate the constitution to allow him to stay in power. Whether their elections are truly free, I don't know. North Korea is an example of an authoritarian, probably a dictatorial, an absolute state. A single ruler who passes down through his family the autocratic power of the state. Ironically, he was missing from an important engagement the other day, and stories abound as to where he is and what he's doing, or if he's ill. But I thought that was a particularly bad choice of words in all the circumstances. We are not. We are being advised what to do, and to a certain extent told what to do under the Coronavirus Act for our own good, and I strongly believe it is for our own good. Yesterday I had calls to go to my local doctor's surgery, and it was an interesting experience. I knocked on the door, I sat in the waiting room, I was the only person in there, and it was a very peaceful, almost serene environment to be in. I could hear some activity in the background as I know the surgery was being deep cleaned after the last patient had been in. A person who I knew in fact, whose main cause for concern when he came out of the surgery and said hello was the fact that he couldn't play golf, and he thought that would probably be a healthy thing to do, far healthier than going shopping. And I must admit I'd be inclined to agree with that to a certain extent. But it gave me pause for thought as I looked out of the window. I saw that our local hardware shop was reopening after a period of 3+ weeks when it hadn't been open. I wondered then, why did it need to open? Did it need to open? What is for sale that's so essential in a hardware shop? Most of which you could probably buy online if you wanted. One element answered itself was the fact that there's a post office in there. But when I left the surgery and walked past just to see what was going on my way home, nobody was using the post office. It was only consisted of people clearly over the age of 70 in the shop. Again this morning, I had calls to post something. And I saw one of the people that work in the shop, and she said most of the people coming in again are over 70, and asked me why I thought they hadn't got the message that they should be staying at home. Well, of course they should. I see where I live, which is an area quite largely populated by elderly people, them out and about all the time, whether they be shopping, suddenly taking exercise, which they never took before, but certainly out and about. And I ask myself the question, why do they not think that they should be subject to the regulations? Why do they think that they shouldn't stay at home? The reason they should stay at home is not because we fear for their health and safety, but if they do contract the disease, they are more likely to be hospitalised and more likely to need the NHS. So if they stay at home and isolate, they're not going to take the NHS staff and services away from people who will need it, who have no option other than to be out and about. I begin to believe that maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a grumpy old git who just seems to enjoy finding fault with people. Maybe to a certain extent I probably am. But it makes me absolutely livid to watch people deliberately ignoring advice. I heard about the incident on Westminster Bridge last Thursday when people gathered en masse to clap the NHS, including policemen. Stood side by side, all of them. The policemen should have been enforcing the distancing zone, not joining in and clapping. Builders, now that's my gripe, builders. They clearly are immune from coronavirus. They clearly don't get it. I see them in vans together. I see them on building sites around where I live as I go for my walk, associating well within the safe distance. They all seem to go en masse to the coffee shop locally. I don't know why, like a friend of mine who's a builder, they can't take flasks of coffee and their own food with them to work while they have to flood into the local shop or flood into the cafeteria. Again, they seem to feel that they're immune from all the restrictions imposed on the rest of us, or the restrictions that we feel that we should be observing. Again, I don't understand it. Perhaps somebody can explain to me that particular point. I heard about an incident outside Iceland, and I'm going back to the elderly again, locally, whereby, because it was raining yesterday, people had to queue outside Iceland in the rain. Rain was always forecast. People didn't seem to take umbrellas. And it was the elderly folk who were complaining to the shop how long it took them to get in. Well, they shouldn't be out in the first place, and secondly, they could have taken wet weather gear with them and stopped complaining, but no, they felt that it's their right to complain. I was interested the other day when there was talk of opening up again various businesses, and I was told that cafes, bars, restaurants and estate agents, that list of 4 was given as a possibility. I don't understand why estate agents should be in that band. I really, really don't. The government's put a veto at the moment, or brought to a halt any house sales or purchases at the moment, and I think that's vital. Yet, of course, there I go again. Walking back from the surgery yesterday, I see a local estate agent parked in the driveway of a house that his agency has for sale, inside the house where I know that the current occupiers are living. I don't understand it. He's the type of person, I think, who thinks he's immune to the norms of normal society, but these aren't the norms of normal society. This is a pandemic, this is a crisis. But he feels he's bigger than that and better than that, and I really don't understand in any shape or form. Today, whilst queuing to post my parcel in the queue. Other people were all observing. There was a chap in front of me I know, and he has carried on working. And throughout this, his wife is an NHS worker. Again, a key worker, very, very important part of our system. But I mentioned that I believe that the lockdown will extend, that it's essential. His view was it shouldn't, that schools should go back. And I said, I'm not sure that they will. He also mentioned that, well, if only 100,000 people have it in a country of 60 million, why can't the rest of us go about our business? We're not going to catch it. And that's the point, though, isn't it? That is entirely the point that he clearly doesn't understand. The fact that only 100,000 people have got it is probably due to the fact that we've been locked down and a vast majority are obeying the lockdown A principles and B the laws that have clearly been put in place for our own good. I'm a strict believer in rules. I'm a strict believer in laws. I like rules because they give me a parameter within which I can function. As a person, without rules, society is in chaos. Without unwritten and unspoken rules, such as the art of queuing, so that letting somebody through a door, letting somebody out at a junction, we would be in chaos. Rules are vital for the civilised functioning of society. And the disobedience of them always cause problems. People queue jumping. People jumping a queue at a ski lift. Everybody objects, nobody says anything. It's always annoying when somebody disobeys a rule. And it's equally the same with people who go out associating. Again, I see it time and time and time again. I fail to understand it. I had good news today anyway, or yesterday, that a person, elderly person, who had contracted coronavirus, who was touch and go in hospital, who'd been on a ventilator and an induced coma, is coming home today. He is not a relative of mine, but he is a relative of somebody incredibly important to me. And that really, really cheered me that people do get better, that vulnerable people, the elderly, do get better. And he caught it even though he'd been isolating. Norman Hunter, one of my great, great favourite footballers of the 70s, 60s and 70s, he died of coronavirus. Timothy Brooke Taylor of the Goodies and Radio 4 panel shows, again, he died of coronavirus. It all brings it home when people you either know or people who are famous or even infamous contract it and are ill from it. I heard Ricky Gervais saying today on the radio that he wouldn't be one of those celebrities putting out there how wonderful and comfortable it is at home, and good on him. And he seems like many who phone into the radios seem to be bewildered, I think is the word, by the people who don't listen, simply don't listen. Anyway, you've probably had enough of me today. Sat in my new garden chair that I bought due to the sunshine being out, and of course it arrived yesterday and it rained, and there's no sunshine today, so I thought I'd bring it indoors and enjoy it. Actually, it's very comfortable. It's the first one I've ever bought. Very, very nice indeed. But anyway, if there is anything about anything that I say that anybody wants to listen to, has any questions or has a point of view that differs with me, I'd love to hear it. I do love a good argument. But anyway, thank you for those of you who choose to listen. And subscribe. Please subscribe and like. If you like, press like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.